Okay, folks, welcome to Mr. Camel's new episode. And in this episode, I'm just gonna start with a question for all of you. How frustrated will you be if you miss your flight? Okay, let's leave about missing your flight. How it would be if your flight is delayed for 1 or 2 hours? Just imagine the situation of yourself in the airport. Okay, let's see if you miss your flight for one day. You will be like, okay, so let's say if your flight is delayed for a week or a month. Today, we are gonna see about one person who was waiting for his flight. Let's say who was waiting at the airport for 18 years. 8 years. It's almost 2 decades. Just imagine 2 decades, 18 years in an airport from 1988 to 2006. Even in 2006, why he was taken from the airport? Because he was not well, and then due to sickness he was taken to the hospital. That was the time. After 18 long years he was taken to the hospital outside the airport. So let's have a look. Who is this person? Why he was in the airport for 18 years? How did he survive? And what happened? Let's see.
From 1988 to 2006, employees and patrons of the Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris grew accustomed to an unusual but increasingly familiar sight. Amid the stacks of luggage being wheeled across terminals, travelers spending layovers in restaurants and bars, and gift shops filled with overpriced souvenirs, a lone man hiding in plain sight lived on a red bench in the pre-departures lounge of France's largest international airport for nearly 2 decades. Sir Alfred's life inside the Charles de Gaulle Airport unfolded through a tragic series of misfortunes and self-sabotage. His name, like his backstory, was ever-evolving, giving those who attempted to liberate him an impossible task.
He has been pretending to be British since at least 5 years.
Disowned by both family and country, all proof of identity either lost or stolen, denied entry into Paris through the airport exit, and unable to fly to a different destination, Sir Alfred was stuck in a perpetual limbo of both coming and going, a place he remained for 18 years. This is the story of Sir Alfred Moran of Terminal 1. When Alfred Moran arrived at the Charles de Gaulle Airport on August 26, 1988, he was a soft-spoken man in his early 40s, eager to catch a flight to the United Kingdom where he hoped to meet his biological mother for the first time. As he boarded the flight, along with several suitcases filled with his essential possessions, Alfred didn't expect he'd be returning to the pre-departures lounge of Charles de Gaulle mere hours later, or that it would be there he would watch the world transform around him, new technologies arriving and fading away, entire nations collapsing and reforming, experiencing it all through newspaper articles and fleeting fragments of overheard conversations. When he arrived at the Heathrow Airport in London, he failed to produce a passport or any other identifying information to the immigration representative. They'd been stolen, he claimed. Alfred was detained and then put back on a plane to Charles de Gaulle. He was initially arrested by airport authorities for attempted unlawful entry into the country. They ultimately determined his residence inside the airport violated no laws, but they were unable to permit him to enter Paris without proof of who he was or where he was from. And his plight would remain until Alfred himself was able to provide the necessary documentation. Amidst it all, Alfred found a red-cushioned bench near a window which overlooked an outside fountain, a view which would become achingly familiar. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Alfred became a part of the Charles de Gaulle landscape. The chime of the intercom which accompanied flight announcements, he heard hundreds of times a day. At night, he curled up on his red bench, his blue jacket serving as a blanket. He'd wake up early before the airport became swarming with passengers to maintain basic hygiene in the terminal bathroom. He made friends with a few airport employees, such as those at McDonald's, which provided nearly all of his meals. Occasionally, people who knew of his situation would supply him with toiletries, clothes, meal tickets, and money. and he would deposit what he didn't immediately need into a savings account which he'd opened with the airport post office. He kept his mind from dwelling on the uncertainty of his situation by reading. Airport employees would regularly see Sir Alfred's unmistakable scalp poking above a rectangle of newspaper, surrounded by plumes of pipe smoke. To anyone who would listen, Alfred would explain that his home country of Iran had expelled him. His family had abandoned him. He was all alone, a stateless enigma the world simply wished to forget. By the following year, Alfred had saved up enough money to purchase another plane ticket to London. Despite having failed to solve his identification dilemma, Alfred decided once again to test his luck. And once again he was denied by Heathrow immigration and sent back to Paris, where he was detained, arrested, and eventually returned to Charles de Gaulle. Deportation was not an option, as there was no birth country on record to which he could be deported. Settling back into his red bench, Sir Alfred resigned to the fact that this would be his home for the indefinite future. It wasn't where he belonged, but it was the only place he was allowed.
And this is loneliness and not too happy. But I hope the result will be a happy end.
But who was Sir Alfred? And how far back did the roots of his misfortune stretch? And was he a victim of bureaucratic circumstance or his own mind? With the name Mehran Karimi Nassiri, Sir Alfred enjoyed an affluent upbringing in Iran. His father was a doctor who worked for the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, providing a comfortable life for his wife and 6 children. But all this was upturned, Mehran states, after his father's death in 1972. For a couple years, he lived in Bradford, England. There, he enrolled in graduate courses in economics, becoming involved in political demonstrations, while receiving a stipend from the woman he'd previously known as his mother. But after 2 years, the money stopped coming in, leaving Mehran with no choice but to return home. When he arrived in Iran, Mehran alleges he was arrested and imprisoned by the Savak secret police, who interrogated, tortured, and expelled him from the country, based on evidence that he had participated in protest against the Iranian Shah. Mehran was given refugee status by the United Nations Committee on Human Rights and granted travel documents which would allow him to pass freely between countries which had signed the Geneva Convention. Mehran lived a restless, nomadic life around Europe for several years before eventually setting his sights on Scotland. It was there he hoped to find his biological mother, the only family he believed he had. His first attempt to enter the United Kingdom from Paris was by boat, and it's during this time at a nearby train station Mehran claims his briefcase containing essential documents such as his passport and refugee papers was stolen. After being arrested for attempted unlawful entry, a recurring theme in Mehran's story, he decided to try again, this time by plane via the Charles de Gaulle airport, and it was here his journey came to a halt.
And this is the life for about 8 years, 9 years.
In July of 2006, Sir Alfred was taken from Charles de Gaulle by ambulance. A health emergency beyond the resources of the airport medical center required his relocation to a nearby hospital. The exact details of Sir Alfred's condition weren't reported, and therefore left to speculation. Unlike his mental health, the airport doctor had reported over the years that his physical health was normal. Alfred may have feared once he was no longer the man inside the airport, the media lost interest. News coverage regarding his current whereabouts is scant. Occasional rumors suggest him to be alive and currently living in Paris, although confirmation from credible sources appears non-existent. But whatever came of Mehran Karimi Nassiri, he fought long to win the name Sir Alfred, the identity of a man who could adapt to the white noise of hundreds of people constantly surrounding him, who would sit at his red bench and watch passengers journey back to their homes, letting go of his desire to do the same. We can only wonder if he took that identity with him as he entered the city he'd watched from behind his window for 18 years. Or if Mehran Karimi Nassiri left Sir Alfred behind in Charles de Gaulle where he belonged.
Okay folks, so it seems like you people enjoyed this video by coming to know about an unknown fact. So please like this video, share it with your friends and family so they will come to know about these factors which is unknown to them, and it's gonna be like something surprise to them to know about this fact of 18 years of a person's life in an airport. And please subscribe and click on the bell notification so you will be notified anytime I upload a new video. And stay tuned, it's Mr. Camel over here, Faraj.